This is the board meeting on KTRS.
909 Big 550 KTRS coming down to one of the last board meetings of the year. We are all here. Our first teamers, not that these second teamers aren't important, but our first teamers are here. Jane Duker, attorney, gadfly, all around town, former chief of staff to Governor Holden. Good morning, Jane Duker.
Good morning. Chad
Garrison is the editor of the Riverfront Times, which I have not purchased an issue of the Riverfront Times since DJ Wilson has gone away.
Well, it's free.
Oh, okay, all right, good to know. And John Deal Jr., who is the speaker in waiting, right? Is that right?
That's correct.
Another couple weeks, and
another couple weeks, January 7th.
Another couple weeks. Let's start off with you, Miss Jane Duker, and that is a story in which Roy Blunt has sort of brought up, which is one that is quite interesting, in that criticism over Bob McCullough for taking so long with his grand jury. Why aren't the feds at least releasing their findings on their idea on what happened during the shooting?
Yeah, I mean, I read that story, and I actually support the fact that he, I think during the confirmation discussions for the new Attorney General nominee, Loretta Lynch, who's a prosecutor out of New York, and by all accounts is a very talented woman and is really qualified. But and I'm sure obviously she's around talking to senators in anticipation for her confirmation, and she had a discussion with Senator Blunt, and he said, I want you guys to hurry up, and maybe before AG Holder finishes, let's get it done.
He said, before you take over, this should be cleared off your desk.
Right, and I think that would be a good idea, and it would be good for St. Louis, and it would be good for everyone to sort of put this to bed, so why don't we hop to it? And so, and I support that, because I think, as long as that's sort of out there, I think it leaves sort of ends loose. And I think, and it's concerning to me because Trayvon Martin, I was actually on Twitter with Jennifer Joyce, the prosecutor, circuit attorney.
On Twitter?
I know, shocking. and he doesn't even know what he writes on Twitter, this one. But anyway.
She was quoting to John Deal for those.
Right, exactly. But I thought that the Trayvon Martin investigation was about 1.5 years or so old, and she corrected me and said, no, it's 3.5 years.
So they're investigating that 3 years later, and they still haven't come up with a decision.
Either a decision or recommendations, and in a civil case is different in that it might not come out. It's not like it's an indictment, but they come out and say, okay, guys, this is what we're doing, and if you're going to put the police department, for example, if they're going to put the Ferguson Police Department under sort of a federal court order saying here are the things that you need to do because you're violating civil rights. So, it's not like an announcement, but there's an announcement, but it's not like a criminal indictment. So, and I guess they could announce an indictment if they find a criminal violation.
But there's one thing, hold on. There's one thing, there's whether or not Ferguson needs total change and so on and so forth, but there's just the facts on the shooting.
Absolutely.
Why can't they release their findings on the facts of the shooting?
And how much more needs to be investigated? Because I am assuming if there are salient facts, that those would have been found and discovered during the criminal proceeding, the state proceeding. And so I guess I'm unclear as to what sort of needs to be done to decide yes or no. And so I think the feds just take too long, and I agree with Senator Blunt, speed it up.
Yeah, I commend Senator Blunt for taking that action. It's clear why the feds don't act, because the feds want their hook in it. And the longer something is out there, and as long as there's a cloud or a gun to the head in terms of what the outcome could be, they can try to force their will or their policies on a community or on a situation if there's an open investigation. This has been probably among the most investigated, researched.
You would hope, right?
Police shooting, probably in the history of the country.
And I'm okay with the feds saying that.
Which is fine. But it gets to your point that it's time to release your findings. There are no new facts out there which are going to come forward at this point. No new credible facts which are going to come forward. They're going to try to turn this into like the Kennedy shooting thing where it just kind of keeps going on.
And I'm okay with them, if they want to use leverage in order to negotiate things that should happen in the police department that if they're violating, but then say it. Say, look,
the
we're in negotiations or whatever. Tell the people that we are actually doing something that's leading us to
You-
where
you
we
should
need to
never
get.
use criminal or the threat of criminal
Oh, I
prosecution
agree
or
with that.
federal
I'm thinking of the
sanctions
civil. I
to
agree
try
with
to
that.
to try to leverage.
Okay, but
something
while
that
you two
can't
lawyers
otherwise
argue,
get.
the rest of us say we're flailing in the wind here. We have to get past
Closure.
this. We can't get past this while you people wait for 3 years to debate this. And as John Deal said, there are no new facts.
Right.
Chad Garrison.
Well, it doesn't. I agree with Blunt that we need to end. I mean, the Trayvon Martin that was over 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't bode well for what may happen here in Ferguson with the investigation into the killing of Michael Brown. But from attorneys I've talked to, I think the reason that the Trayvon Martin is just hanging there is that because they probably don't have enough to
Right.
do, a civil rights, criminal violations or any type of sanctions against, Zimmerman acted alone.
Right.
So it's not like you can come down on a police department there. But
or the prosecutor's office. I mean, that's a hard case to make.
So they're just going to let it open forever because they can't make a decision or they don't have enough evidence?
They don't. There's no legal requirement that they have a certain amount of time to conclude. So, like for example, one of the cases that was
So they can think of this for 20 years if
Yeah.
they want to?
I mean, there's a
Absolutely.
statute of limitations that would eventually run depending on what you're pursuing. But for example, in the Jack in the Box case, I mean, the feds didn't come out for two years after McCullough came out and said that they declined to prosecute, and the feds came out, 2 years later, when everything had sort of cooled down and came out and came to the same conclusion. And so there's a school of thought that that's one of the reasons why they haven't come out, is that they're going to come to the same conclusion but want things to kind of cool off.
All right, so that's that. John Deal, starting today in Jefferson City, there is a commission that is being set up, or a panel investigation. What's going on with that?
Right. There exists by statute a committee called the Joint Committee on Government Accountability, and it's made up of House and Senate members. There's 4 members of the House who are Republicans, 3 who are Democrats, 4 Republican senators, and 3 Democrat senators. And what they're starting today is the first meeting to start the process of trying to do oversight and accountability on what happened with the state's response in Ferguson. And they're going to be looking, as I understand, primarily at 2 different things. One, where is state money gone in regard to this situation? The governor has set up the Ferguson commission. He's set up a community outreach where he's paying several people $100,000 plus salaries. I think it's called a community outreach program. It's also, he's announced a summer jobs program that the legislature did not appropriate. It looks like a lot of this money is coming from
National Guard, Highway Patrol.
what
Yes,
happened to
state
National
of
Guard
emergency.
money, what happened to Highway Patrol money. And it looks like a lot of these little programs he's setting up are coming out of appropriated monies for Division of Social Services, which he's withholding money for vital services.
Can he
such
do
as-
that?
Well,
Yes.
we're going to see. We're going to see, and that's what maybe loopholes we need to do, but certainly not what was intended in those appropriations. So those are the types of things. And then most importantly, what happened on Monday night? Why did we declare a state of emergency? Why did we what was the state's response plan? Why was that state response plan followed? And if not, why wasn't it followed? I think there are a lot of questions. We've had numerous contacts from first responders, law enforcement, obviously businesses on the ground, local elected officials that all say the state dropped the ball that night. And we're going to try to get to the bottom of it.
Does this panel, does this commission, is the governor going to have to come and testify? Is there a subpoena power? How does all that work?
Yeah, so this committee by statute has subpoena power similar to what a circuit court has. It can compel witnesses to come, and it can compel documents to be produced. So I think what they're doing today is meeting to elect a chairman of that commission between the House and the Senate, elect a vice chairman, and then set forth a game plan on how they're going to proceed over the next 60 to 90 days.
If this commission wanted to, they could ask Governor Nixon to come and testify in front of this
It's
commission.
my understanding that they can.
Yes. And is it open-ended? Is it, as you mentioned, 60 to 90 days? Is it a week? Do we
Well,
have any idea?
I mean, look, I think it's clearly something we want to wrap up soon, and we're not going to be like the federal government and keep it hanging on. How long it takes depends on the level of cooperation that we get from the administration and how long it takes to get documents out of the federal government coming the other way back to the state to see what, if anything, they told us to do or not to do. That's probably going to be problematic. But really how long this takes is going to be directly dependent on how cooperative the governor is in his
It is a bipartisan commission, right?
There's a bipartisan commission.
It seems like there's a lot of people from both parties
Correct.
on.
In fact, there's better representation for Democrats on this committee than they would otherwise be entitled to under the percentages in the General Assembly.
Because
that's the way it's set up in statute.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Jane, do you want to jump on anything on that?
Well, it's interesting because I've heard, and this could lead to a showdown. I mean, the idea of, and I'm just looking at it sort of from the governmental geek lawyer perspective, but this idea of the legislature subpoenaing the governor, and are we going to have sort of an executive, legislative, two different branches of government sort of shutting down with the third branch deciding? So that could be interesting depending on how.
What about the governor finally
responds.
having to answer questions?
Well, I mean, I think this is the deal, and I don't know.
Are you going to hold those in Cape Girardeau so the media can go?
Well, it would be good to have it.
Sorry.
Press corps. But anyway, I mean, I know that there have been sunshine law requests that have gone out, and so I would imagine a lot of what is being requested would be public record. So I think now testimony and that kind of thing, I think would be different. But sunshine law, I mean, if there were phone calls and if there was emails and there was things, those things should already be coming out. And I understand there have been sunshine law requests, and that I've heard that, and I don't know if this is the legislature, but that he was going to respond, I guess, like right before Christmas, like the 23rd of December. Did that?
Right.
I don't know if you've heard that.
He's going to respond
that the
by
governor's
himself
office is going
vis-a-vis Jay Nixon.
Well, yeah, that they're going to respond to the sunshine law request of what happened.
Sorry.
That I know I'm trying to stay above the fray here.
I want Chad to get in here. Chad, do you have anything? Because we'll let you talk more next segment.
Well, I think that this commission is all fine and good. I think that there's questions to certainly be answered, but I'm curious why unfortunately there was money needed for this, and it's unfortunate that Nixon had to rob Peter to pay Paul, but we had to there was money needed. The guard did need to be there. Now, why they didn't act Monday night, I think that's good to question, but I would think that, and I don't know, John, but is there a emergency fund for things like this? I mean, it's not a natural disaster, but
there absolutely is. And this was appropriate. You have to understand how the appropriations process worked. The governor was playing some kind of game when we don't know what that was and how he thought it would end out, but clearly he didn't want to come answer questions as to why he needed the money. So when he made that call to us a couple Friday nights ago saying we would have to go into special session, he was very vague on why he needed the money. He couldn't answer what the money's been spent on up to this point or what he needed it for in the future, only that the guard couldn't make payroll on the 15th. Well, that's fundamentally not true because the guard has a big appropriation item. We're only 5 months into a fiscal year. So you could still correct that problem come January. In addition, there's an $11 million item which we appropriate to be used by any state agency pursuant to a state of declaration of emergency declared
sitting there
by the governor in immediate response thereto.
And that was not.
And he just ignored that.
Well, or else
he certainly knew about it.
I think he wanted you all to declare that if he took money from certain funds, that you all wouldn't, complain.
Oh, I don't think that's it at all.
I think
he wanted to bully us into putting an E back on the National Guard so he can run all types of state money in it. The year we had Joplin, we had an E on the emergency response line, and there was a couple $100 million that was just absorbed into the budget that year that no one knows what really actually happened to it. So those are the types of things I think we're trying to avoid.
So this special session that he called for and then canceled, you guys said, great, give us the bills. And he said, oh, never mind, we don't need the special session.
No, we said give you the bills, and the way special sessions are most effective is when you get down here and answer all the questions as to why you need a special session, and that's when he demurred and decided not to have it. That money absolutely was there.
That is John Deal. That is Chad Garrison. That is Jane Duker. We'll let Chad talk more next segment. 9:24 here, Big 550, KT.